Hi, I'm Paul Friedman. I'm the founder of the Marriage Foundation. Hopefully you've already subscribed to this channel. It's a very valuable tool for you if you're married. I used to be a divorce mediator. I got into helping marriages because one of my clients, this is going back to the early 2000s, one of my clients, the couple, went through all of the marriage therapy, all the marriage counseling, and they were at the end of the line. They needed to save their marriage. They asked me to help them, and I rediscovered marriage, truly. And you'll discover that just in this video alone. This is anxiety and depression in marriage. In our world, let's face it, it's not an easy place. The world is a hard place. But the realization that I have had about marriage is that God literally created marriage to give us, and I call it the sacred space of marriage, to give us a venue. And if you think about marriage as a venue, you'll realize that it is unique. There is no other venue like it. In fact, the closest to it, believe it or not, is the venue of a monastery where people are on a spiritual path and they're cut off from the rest of the world. And in marriage, and I don't think it's an accident, in marriage, you're supposed to be cut off from the rest of the world. The rest of the world is brutal. It is. And our mission as human beings, if you think about it, what is the highest possible goal? It's exactly the same as it is for a married person. It is exactly the same for a person on a spiritual path. Happiness, love. That's why people get married in the first place. It's why you got married. And so we are, of course, hit by all of these outer conditions that are, I believe, intended to bring us down, to suck us down. And the people who get sucked down the most are considered to be depressed. They are filled with anxiety. They can barely handle life. And the world's response to that, I don't think is correct. Now, occasionally it might be correct, but not very often. But you know, we live in a world where we like to treat the symptoms. So what happens is the big pharmaceutical companies, and I'm not slamming them, although they probably could use a little slamming, the big pharmaceutical companies want to work on, and it's noble in a way, work on the affliction, work on what people are feeling, the anxiety. So they come up with nerve deadening medication for anxiety and for depression. They remove the symptom. They don't actually remove it. They mask it. But the cause is believed to be outer conditions or a susceptibility, and oftentimes they will blame psychophysiological causes like bipolar, which is, if you have a chemical imbalance in the physical brain, it's going to wreak havoc. But not for most people. That's not usually what's happening. Usually what's happening is a universal problem, because as a world, as a society, we are growing up, we are advancing, we are progressing, and we haven't yet learned, some know, but we haven't learned as a society that the mind, your mind, is intended to be used as a tool. It is a possession of yours. You're a soul, you have a body, you have a mind. You're supposed to use both of them. But what happens is, because we're not introduced to this idea, we are pummeled by our mind. Why? The mind is an instrument. It's a beautiful tool. It's a beautiful computer. It's a beautiful receiver of information from creation through the apparatus of our sight, of our hearing, of our taste, our touch. We receive data. The mind goes into its memory, tells us what we're seeing based on previous experiences, and tells us what it means to us. But we're not taught to manage our minds. We're not taught to master our minds. So when we receive this information, we, the soul, we just go along with it. But once you begin to learn how to master your mind, everything begins to change. And an anxious thought, and for some of you, you're not going to believe this, but I'm telling you the truth. An anxious thought, a feeling of anxiety, a depressive thought or feeling, they can be stopped in their tracks. Just stopped. How? Well, it is your mind. And you can do it. I'm going to let you do a little experiment right now. Think of an elephant. Now, think of a giraffe. Now, think of a crocodile. Every time I suggest to you to think of something else and you're receptive, you literally implant those thoughts into your mind. You're hearing it, your mind is hearing it, but you, the soul, you're the one with the free will. So you decide whether you're going to think of a crocodile or not. When you have a feeling of depression and you choose to replace that feeling with that feeling of love that you first felt when you met your soulmate, that's overwhelming. And by the way, that's you, the soul, that's feeling that. That is not an emotion. Emotions are of the mind. When you make up the mind, your mind, to leave these other thoughts behind, these other feelings behind, we call them emotions, and instead put your attention on the inner love, then the depression, the anxiety give way to your determination to have much higher, much more lovely thoughts and feelings. Is what I'm talking about crazy? No, it is not. It is literally methodical. Now, can you just do it just like that? No, because you have this other attribute, this thing called free will. We're the only creatures, we're special creatures, who have free will. But when we don't exercise it, think of it as a muscle. And when we don't exercise it, then what happens is it atrophies. And for most of us, it has atrophied to the point of where we are complete victims, complete slaves to our habits, to our instincts, to our phobias. Doesn't matter what you call it. But I've been doing this now since 2001, when I discovered the SO technique, which we offer to our clients in our courses, Course for Men and Course for Women. This SO technique gives you the power. And the SO technique stands for Stop, Evaluate, and Act with Wisdom. But you have to know all of the things around it, how the mind works and how to do it. And it's a gradual buildup. There is no thought, no feeling that overwhelms me anymore. And when I got this, you know, it's kind of interesting. I made up my mind in the 90s, 1990s, yes, I'm that old, that I would deal with anger. I had what is referred to as an anger problem. Oh my God. I thought I had tons of willpower. When I first made a determined effort, I was literally on the floor in fetal position, clutching my stomach, and I could not control my mind. I could not do it. I got all kinds of supportive sayings. I carried around this thing by St. Francis. I made a real effort. And guess what? I'm going to say for 5-6 years, I focused on getting rid of anger. Couldn't do it. All I could do was suppress it, was not allow it to come out. It still came out occasionally, but not very much. And I have to admit, I built up my willpower by exercising that determination, but I couldn't eliminate anger. Then what happened was, and this goes back to my very first couple, and what I did for them, and by the way, I was a divorce mediator. I just stopped helping people get a divorce because I realized no one should get a divorce. So what I did with my first couple, after I realized the goals of marriage, after I realized the purpose, after I realized that we have, because of our free will, a binary choice, should I behave this way or this way? And my first couple was really thrilled. But I'm going to call him John. He came back to me several weeks later. Paul, this stuff is amazing. It's right on. Our marriage is way better, but. What? But. I can't control my mind. I'm going to give you the candid version of what happened next. I prayed. I meditated. And what came to me was this so technique. And it's unbelievable. So you stop, you evaluate, you act with wisdom, and immediately I started gaining control over this anger. Started getting rid of it. Now I rarely get angry. It rarely comes out, finds a little place to sneak out. But the inner triggers in my mind aren't responding to the outer stimulation that used to put me into the mode of anger. Nearly eliminated. Virtually any thought that I want to stop now, I can. And you can too. I'm not a superhuman. I am just like everyone else. If I can do it, you can do it. Now this so technique I find indispensable. A lot of people don't want to spend the money on the course. I understand that. And it's too big. And there's too much context for me to just give it to you in one of these videos. But that's what really works. So I'm not going off on a tangent, by the way. We're still talking about depression and anxiety. These are problems in the mind. This is when you're so overwhelmed by these thoughts and feelings that it cripples you. And it does. I've seen people in serious trouble. Unfortunately, they run to the doctor, and in most cases, whether they have a psychophysiological problem with their physical brain or not, they're prescribed medication. The medication actually makes it more difficult for them to exercise their willpower, their volition. And then they're stuck on medication for so long, they become toxic, it builds up in the system, and then it's very difficult. But it still can be done. It still can be done, but there has to be determination, there has to be guidance. So the question is about anxiety and depression in marriage, but anxiety and depression don't exist because of a marriage. It may be that one partner is triggering the other partner. I'm sure they don't do it on purpose. And if they do, they're doing it in a reactive way because they feel they're being triggered. Marriage, when you live on the surface, when you live your marriage in that mundane realm of day-to-day stuff, now here is where we lift everything up. If you live your marriage on the mundane plane of every day, you're going to have one problem after another. You're going to be confounded by one problem after another, and you're going to be on an emotional merry-go-round, and you'll never get off. The whole idea of marriage, don't forget, is for happiness and love. Love is a spiritual thing. It is above the mind. It is above the mundane. And when you got married, you married because you fell in love. That's why most people get married. I know there's some exceptions, but forget those people. You got married because you fell in love. You found your soulmate and you experienced love. But you were not taught, you didn't know how to live on that plane of love. And so you succumbed to the pull of the mind, which loves drama. The mind loves drama. It doesn't understand love because the mind is a mechanical thing. It is not intended to experience love. You, the soul, are intended to lift yourself above the mind, above the emotions, and experience love all the time, and operate your life and your marriage, but especially your marriage, on a much higher plane. That's the whole idea of marriage. Marriage is the greatest gift from God, to experience love. Unconditional, marital, whatever you want to call it, but the real deal, not the increased like, not the emotional, exaggerated enjoyment or pleasure. Love is everything. And that's what it's all about. I hope you like this video. Please do. I hope you subscribe to this channel. Please do. And if you would like to contact a counselor, you can do so. Just write to us. Go to the website, our website, themarriagefoundation.org, and see all the offerings that we have. Soon we're going to have an offering where we are training counselors. We want to have TMF counselors on the ground so that we can overwhelm the world with the right approach to marriage, an approach based on love and joy. I'm Paul Friedman. I founded the Marriage Foundation. Thank you for joining me. God bless you, and take care.